Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to my channel. Thank you for visiting. And today I'm going to speak about counterdependency. Now, there's a lot around about codependency, but not very much around about counterdependency. And I came to it a bit late in the game myself, and I was quite horrified. So look, if you haven't watched my video on codependency, there's an early one on codependency, and then there's a more recent one, codependency revisited. I suggest that you watch that first. And actually, if you want to be notified of videos in this series, click subscribe and you'll be notified. So anyway, today, counterdependency. So from the last video, you'll get it that I had extricated myself from a difficult marriage and a really difficult divorce situation. It took a while to get clear. And I came to learn that, in fact, wondering how did I get myself into this, that I understood that I was codependent because my early dependency needs had not been met. And I had gravitated into a very needy relationship. And, and I did understand as well, if I did not address that, I would do what many people in that situation do, is that they just go into another codependent relationship, which breaks down, and they go into another codependent relationship, which breaks down. And there is a pattern and a cycle. And I discovered that when I went along to Al-Anon, and there was a very lovely woman there who was telling the story of her fourth marriage breakdown to her fourth alcoholic. And I was really quite shocked and horrified at the idea that someone who I could see was quite a lovely, intelligent woman, how did that happen to her? So that kind of actually caused me to make a decision that I will not get involved with anybody else in any relationship until I have worked through my my own patterns in therapy, which I did. I went into, and as I told you in the last video, I signed up for a 4-year degree course in social work qualification. So it was for 4 years. And I decided, well, during that time, I'm going to focus on my studying and I will stay clear of relationships because it seemed to me the only way to keep myself safe from making the same kind of mistake was to just not be involved with anybody. Anyway, more on that in a moment. So all this professional training I was doing in therapy that I was doing, I was becoming more self-aware and understanding more about myself and why I had become codependent and how I needed to address that by kind of becoming aware, talking it out therapeutically, and rejigging my perspective of myself, my life, and my personal constructs, what I'd come to believe about myself. And actually, during that time, raising my self-esteem, my confidence, and my studying and professional training was all part and parcel of that rebuilding of my life. Which was really, really good for me. And I think it was good for my children as well to see me enjoying what I was doing and making the most of my life. But what was happening in the background that I wasn't aware of, I was so focused on learning and moving out of being a victim and someone who had been a bit of a doormat and my with low self-esteem, kind of building myself up and rebuilding my life, and in my mind becoming independent, because I had come to understand, and indeed had been taught in my professional training, that healthy development is that we go from our dependence on our parents and caregivers when we're children, and then we move into independence and we become self-sufficient, able to stand on our own 2 feet and take care of ourselves. And then we move from that into an interdependent relationship with some equally healthy person who is also independent and able to stand on their own 2 feet. And that I would form, well, a healthy person forms an interdependent relationship with someone else. So you're not codependent and really clinging and sucking the life out of each other and giving each other a lot of grief. So I was so focused on becoming independent and self-sufficient, I went into a kind of superwoman mode of I don't need anybody. I didn't ask anybody for help. It seemed like, you know, to ask for help was a sign of vulnerability, was a sign of neediness, and I was so wanting to get away from that, that I was ultra independent. And I thought that was the right way to be really strong, to be really independent, to be able to do everything myself. I mean, I even took fireplaces out myself. I did all the decorating myself, and I taught my daughter how to do stuff as well. But, you know, I became ultra independent, and yeah, I at the same time, I wouldn't go out, I wouldn't even have a date with anybody. I was just kind of reparenting myself, having the therapy, learning, putting in boundaries like they were they were like walls I was building around myself without realizing it. And I had zero tolerance on anybody who was disrespectful towards me in any way. And eventually I realized that I had gone too far, that I had so moved from being codependent or dependent that I actually had become quite tough, and I was losing myself. I was losing um, a softness that actually was a part of who I was. So I became aware. And you know, altogether, it would have been, actually, it would have been about 6 years before I became aware that there was such a thing as counterdependency. And that what I believed was normal development from dependent to independent to interdependent. Actually, in fact, what most people do, the majority of people, not all, but majority, a big majority, go from dependent, and they do go into counter-dependent, because there's a lot of people have had their early childhood needs disrupted or not met, and there's developmental gaps where you've got two very busy working parents who mean well, but actually often children are neglected emotionally, not intentionally by parents, but that's what happens. And there are needs are, so, you know, they tend to be emotionally clingy adults then. So, but I came to realize that I had shifted from being codependent to being counterdependent, and that in fact, what I was doing was holding relationships with people generally. I mean, I had some close friends, but generally I was holding people at a distance, and I had developed a range of emotionally distancing behaviors that told people in so many words, this close, but no closer. So I would have maybe lunch with somebody, but I wouldn't go out with them for the evening. And not very many people even got to have lunch with me. So because 10 years I stayed single between my divorce. I did have a kind of a transitional relationship, but that was very much arm's length. Um, and I realized that that was a feature of my life because I had never had a father, and I'd never had a father figure. And in fact, I realized that pretty well most of the boyfriends that I ever had were people who were at a distance, who lived in another part of the country, or even, in fact, I had boyfriends in different countries. And when I married my first husband, he was in the military and he was away most of the time. And then even after we were married, he was away most of the time. So I had a pattern of having distance in relationships, and I came to understand that I also had distancing behaviors. And so if you know, that is something that you need to look out for, that actually many people go from codependency and they get so enthused about it that they go into counter-dependent behaviors. And you know, part of that is because they associate closeness with pain. And I believe that particularly those of you who have been in relationships with alcoholics or other addictive behaviors, where there has been that kind of codependency and abusive behavior and painful and hurtful behaviors, and there's been a lot of pain for a long time. Um, of course, some people want to jump straight into trying to find another relationship that works, and other people just want to hold relationships at a distance. Some want to be in another relationship, but don't realize they're holding people at a distance as well. So my reason for making this is to really raise your awareness about counter dependence. And I'll refer to it in other videos, but I just wanted people to become aware of codependency first, and then to be aware that there is counter dependency, and just check out. And you can have both those behaviors. I mean, who knew you could have both those behaviors? So just be aware of it. And once again, if you want to have more videos on this and counter dependence, codependence, reparenting, click subscribe and you'll get notifications. So I hope that was helpful, and thank you for listening. Bye for now.